those because you don't know if you're going to get another one. And
All right, we're ready to go. I am going to call the Plan Commission meeting on January 4th, 2021 to order. Roll call, please.
President Jay Lang.
Here.
Trustee Judy Kelboulder.
Here.
Commissioner Todd Duquette. Here. Commissioner Randy Case.
Here.
Commissioner Eric Pedra.
here,
Commissioner Cliff Vander.
Here. Let's stand for a pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public comment. This is an opportunity for anyone to address the Plan Commission on any issue. Please observe the time limit of 3 minutes. While the Plan Commission encourages input from residents, it may not discuss or act on any issue that's not duly noticed on the agenda.
I did not have any pre-registrations for public comment. We do have a few that have joined us on Zoom here. Is anyone on Zoom in the virtual world would like to add a public comment? Going once, twice, third time? Go ahead, Jay.
All right, we're on to general business. First on the list is approval of the minutes from the Plan Commission meeting held December 7th.
So
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the Plan Commission meeting held on December 7th, 2020. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. All right. Number 2, discussion and possible action regarding the site map for 1805 Bourbon Road. So you have a hard copy of it and it was sent to you in the past.
Yeah, so I can give a little introduction here.
Sure, that would be great.
And then we can go from there. So we have Mike Andres with us, the property owner. He purchased the building, and if you remember in the past here, he had come to the Plan Commission and the village board to obtain a conditional use permit for the property located at 1805 Bourbon Road. At that time, the intention was to remodel the top floor, and then move on to the bottom floor at a later time. Since then, and because of the change in the environmental corridor, Mike would like to make sure that in order to, when doing the reconstruction, that he have enough parking spaces. And so, as part of that, the conditional use permit in the past had allowed, the Plan Commission and the village board had allowed for 26 parking stalls, a minimum of 26 parking stalls. And then had required or asked that Mike bring a site plan back to the village for review and approval, and he wished to finish out the bottom floor. And so what you have before you is a proposed site plan with 30 parking stalls, and the area that he intends to inhibit. So you can see in the middle of the diagram here, what is in the green, purple and blue and orange are the usable space, and what is in the white would not be used. So if you
That would be occupied now, the ones that are in the colors?
correct.
Okay.
Wouldn't be considered occupied.
So with that being said, I believe our zoning code states that the district that they're in requires 300 or one parking space per 300 gross square foot. In talking about this previously, it made sense to consider the space that's being used. My discussion with my understanding that the space on the first floor, that which includes the green and the purple and orange here, that white area is the hallway space that won't be used for offices. And then on this blue square here, a white area cannot be expanded into. And so we had that noted on the site plan as far as any future expansion and limiting the parking spaces to the usable square footage. So we do also have Mike Slavny here, our village planner. Mike Enders is available for a question.
Yeah.
Mike Enders, did you want to say something? Mike, we can't hear you. Is that or did you call in on the phone too? Yeah, so I'll ask you to unmute your phone. I think it's *6 to unmute your phone.
Good evening.
Evening.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, I appreciate you guys taking a look at everything with me and working on this project with me. I'm pretty excited about the architect that we used on the plan. Looking at everything, I think he did a great job of laying it all out. The biggest thing, the only thing, and I can't tell on this plan, yeah, it did get moved. The receptacle spaces are going to be moved to the lower area now. I wanted that away from the road. So that's going to be down on it would be the northeast corner down there. Can you guys see where I'm saying?
Yeah.
Correct. Keep going down. Right there. Yep. You can see kind of where there's that box with those arrows.
Yep.
That's going to be down in there now. It was to keep, and our plan is to make a nice enclosure area where you won't see any of the garbage or anything, but I wanted to get that away from the road and from the entrance of the building. I feel like where it's currently located, it's kind of an eyesore for the park and the people kind of walking by. In regards to, we do have at this point the whole main level all spoken for. The lower level, we do not have anybody at this point. And what we feel would be the best fit for the lower level would be some kind of a workout facility or a yoga studio or a karate studio, something of that nature where limited renovations would need to be done. So, but yeah, no, I think everything is, we're hoping to start construction around April is kind of what we're hoping for. And the main level of the building will basically be tore completely apart all the way down. Even the interior studs will be completely removed. And our goal is to, financing approved, actually redo all the outside as well at the same time, roof and siding. So.
Well,
I want to make a quick comment that Kevin Enthusiast has joined us on Zoom here.
Hey, Mike, I know you moved trash. The only thing I would suggest, I mean, I like where it's at, is I would talk to the company because I don't know where the dump truck would be able to turn around. And that is a very long ways to try to back a dump truck, a garbage truck out if they're using the lift.
I appreciate that because we did talk about that with the architect too, that we'll have to make sure that they are able to do that. What we were thinking about, and we've got to check out the measurements of it, when you pull down by stall 20, if you pulled straight in and then you backed straight up all the way back down to the receptacles, that was when we measured it, that's what our goal was.
Oh, okay.
So it is a fair ways, but it's not backing down the ramp to the back area.
Right. No, that's a good, we had a project I was involved in, we had to give up 2 parking spots just so there'd be room for the truck to back up and turn around.
Yep.
So. All right, just wanted to point that out. Otherwise, it looks really good.
And Mike, I'll just say at our bank, they back up all the way through the drive up. They back all the way up and have a little corner there and they still do it. And it's all the way back up through the drive up. So they do it. Somehow they do it.
Mike Slavny, did you have anything to add?
Well, I think this plan really lays out everything. I appreciate the effort that went into it. I will note on the site plan to accommodate that kind of Y turn that Mike is talking about, pavement could be added as long as it doesn't get into that green area, the green shaded
Oh.
area.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
And it needs to stay 5 feet from the side and the rear property line. So I think if you even came back like 15 feet, it would really help make that Y turn. The second thing I would add is as the tenants come in and fill up the building, and Mike, as you have some real life parking experience, if you find that you always have surplus spaces that aren't being used, I would encourage you to come back in and just give the plan commission an update. And through a plan development process, we could even consider allowing you to use the whole downstairs.
Okay.
If your real life experience is that you're not using all the spaces.
Yeah, I appreciate that. The building itself, the way it sits, the lower level is always going to be kind of hard for us to fully utilize that white space, just with the way it lays out. We may be able to, at some time on the eastern side of the building, use part of that, but that's still going to be hard because it's all underground. And whatever the tenant's going to be is probably going to be held to restrictions about exits and whatnot. But I appreciate you mentioning that, because that'll help, possibly, I can bring up if someone wants to expand or whatever the case would be. So, no, thank you.
Right, and maybe it's just additional room in the studio area if that's the way this goes. But otherwise, I really appreciate the amount of effort that went into this, and I think it's ready for approval.
I did have one question to the plan commission. Maybe this would be used, but my architect, when he drew this up, put in bike parking. I don't know if we would use that a lot, but it was something he said we should really be added to it. But if it's something that isn't going to be required, I'd probably go without. Yes, correct, right there.
Since this is an existing building, unless the plan commission required it, that would not be required kind of after the fact. But again, if you find you're short on some parking spaces, maybe put a rack in there and see if it makes a difference.
Okay.
But we would approve it without that, I believe.
Yeah.
Without
That's
that.
correct.
I like the plan. The only thing I noted here is I drove around and looked at the backside. It's very visible from our park along the creek. Would it be possible to add a tree or two to the north side of the property? I know it's the backside of the building, but we get an awful lot of use of that park, and where it's not difficult to do, it just seems like it's nice to dress up the side of the building that's going to face that park.
Yeah, what our plan is to do back there, first, I think this isn't a knock on the previous owner of the building, but I think anything we do to this property is going to increase the curb appeal and the appeal from the park across the creek. But what our plan to do is do a row of narrow arborvitae, those taller, narrow ones, and nicely space them. We'll more than likely, our goal is to do that this year, but we're going to see. We talked about actually bringing in kind of a landscaping architect too to try to help. This is going to be our building for a very long time, so I want to make it look as nice as it can. But at the least, putting in kind of a narrow row arborvitae tree to kind of help separate the park or the creek walkway from our building.
Well, thanks for considering that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anybody else have any comments or questions, Mike? Well, I think you might did a really nice job on this.
Well, I hire a good architect and they'll take care of that for you. No, I'm very happy with the way things turned out. So
All right, Bill?
You want to see if Kevin, Lucy has any comments?
Oh, sure. Kevin, do you have any questions?
I would first tell Mike Andrews that it looks wonderful, and thank you. And secondly, I second Randy's comment about some sort of vegetation in the back, and so I appreciate you already thinking about that, Mike. So
Yep.
thanks, Jay, for calling on me.
Yep. All right, do I have a motion to approve the site map for 1805 Bourbon Road?
Yes.
Okay, I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to approve the site map for 1805 Bourbon Road. Any discussion?
Do we want to add in future vegetation on the back lot?
No.
Okay. I'm asking.
Yeah. All right, let's do a roll call vote, please.
Trustee Kettlebaum,
Yes.
Commissioner DeQuitt,
Yes.
Commissioner Case,
Yes.
Commissioner Patrick,
Yes.
Commissioner Zander,
Yes.
Trustee Lucius,
Yes.
President Longfellow.
Yes. All right, you're good to go, Mike. We'll be at the board meeting in January 25th.
That's correct.
Thank you guys for helping us keep our business in Cross Plains, and I look forward to the future.
Awesome.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Bye now.
All right, we have discussion regarding the use of conditional use permits in the village zoning code. This is a continuation from last month when we talked a little bit about the planned developments. This is the second one. I think this hits at a good time because we just went through a case. Mike, do you want to give kind of a summary, maybe a history and the advantages of using these conditional use permits?
I will, and Bill, I have some things that I could show if at Village Hall you have the ability to show them on a screen.
I do, Mike. Actually, I can give you control of the mouse.
Thank you.
And let you go from there.
Good thing you're driving it, Bill.
Okay, go ahead, Mike.
Righty, let's see here. So I'm hoping you see a page from the zoning code. That's kind of a table.
We do.
And this is the table of which land uses are permitted in which zoning districts. And I always suggest that when you've got a building that's looking for a tenant, or you've got a tenant that's looking for a possible location, this is a great place to start. And that's how all development happens. It's when that building looking for a tenant or property looking for a building link up with the tenant looking for the site. That's how development happens. And you can see on this table, I've got the commercial land uses called up, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger and easier to see. There we go. So we've got the zoning districts coming across, and here are our commercial districts: neighborhood mixed use, community mixed use, Main Street mixed use, and then here are our industrial districts: business park, light industrial, general industrial, and mineral extraction. And here are the uses that our zoning code uses. And what we have are broad use categories And then within each of these, there are examples in the code, but office would be something like an accountant's office. Personal or professional service would be something that typically uses by appointments, and customers can come into the building like a doctor's office. We have indoor sales or service like you would have for a retail store, outdoor display, physical activity studio like a yoga studio, indoor commercial entertainment like a restaurant, and outdoor entertainment like if that restaurant had outdoor dining, and in-vehicle sales or service like drive-in, drive-up, drive-through uses. And typically, especially for indoor sales and service, there can be a whole bunch of different things that sell things indoors. And the old code listed things like toy shop and hobby shop and pet store. And, we just can't keep up nowadays. The economy is evolving so fast, we'll never be able to list everything. And so we just use these big categories. And then over in this part of the table, you can see a bunch of cells where these things intersect, and the P's are uses which are permitted by right, and the C's are uses which are permitted by conditional use. Now, the majority of commercial uses are going to be offices, professional services, and retail. But then we've got these other uses that really don't fit into those categories that are much more narrow, and we call them out individually. And you can see that most of those are always conditional uses because they can have impacts on the neighborhood or the street or the community as a whole. So for example, in-vehicle sales and service land uses like drive-throughs, you can have a big backup in the morning. And if they're not carefully designed, you can have traffic congestion going out onto the street where the cars back up. Or you could have late night hours with headlights swinging along. So anything that has the potential to become a nuisance, we typically regulate as a conditional use. And until about 3 years ago, this system worked really good. We rarely denied a conditional use, but we often put conditions on, maybe a limit on operating hours or strict control of outdoor speakers or lighting. It would depend on the situation. And with a conditional use, you're able to customize it to a particular situation. Now, one thing a conditional use can't do is it cannot relax the rules. It can add rules, but it can't relax them. To relax the rules, you need the plan development. So, about 3 years ago, the state law changed, and it made it much more difficult for any community to deny a conditional use permit outright. It identified limitations that are always okay to impose, but it's very hard now to deny a conditional use. And back before 3 years ago, it was pretty easy to deny a conditional use. Essentially, 3 years ago, the applicant would have to prove why their conditional use would be a good idea and would not cause problems. And now, under the new law, it's up to the village to prove if it will cause problems and should be denied. And so at some point, we may want to review these and make sure we have Cs in the right places. If it's blank, that means that use isn't permitted. So let me go down to another document that just gives background on this new law. So this is a document from Brian Ohm, who is a law professor at the UW, who also is a professor in the planning department. And
My,
I didn't go to UW-Madison for my planning degree, but I'm friends with Professor Ohm. And
my,
so he asked me, I asked him a bunch of questions before he wrote this article. And did someone have a question?
yeah, Mike, this is Bill. We didn't see you switch the screen here, so we're still.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to that one. Thanks.
Okay. There you go.
All righty. So this is Dr. Ohm's article that he wrote for planners and plan commissioners. And I'll be happy to forward this over to Bill and he can send it out to members of the Plan Commission and the council. So this was done in 2017 as Act 67. And you won't find it there now. You're going to find all of these under section 2, under 6223(7), which is a part of the zoning powers, part of statutes. And he has a summary of the impacts of the new requirements that are on page 2. And let me just quickly go through those. The requirements and conditions that are now identified have to be reasonable and, to the extent practicable, measurable. So it could be a restriction, for example, on operating hours. It could be a limit on a number of seating spots in an establishment. It could be a limit on light fixtures, which are measurable, or noise that's created. And, you know, we've kind of stuck to that historically in the village anyway, but now it's part of the statute. Any condition must relate to the purpose of the ordinance and be based on substantial evidence. And, you know, the ordinance is broad and identifies a lot of public purposes, but being based on substantial evidence is tricky under the new statute. So if we want to impose limits on, say, time, you know, the all outdoor activity has to be done at 11 p.m., for example, we'll need to cite evidence of why that time makes sense. You know, it's people's bedtimes, whatever, but we have to give a reason for it. If it's related to limiting a drive-through, let's say, to one station rather than two, which a lot of McDonald's are now doing, we need to give evidence that we're worried about traffic backing up into the street. So, you know, when I write reports for conditional uses, I'll have to keep these things in mind. And I've been keeping these things in mind, and maybe you haven't noticed, but my reports have changed since the new law went into effect. And then in the third bullet, it says substantial evidence means facts and information other than merely personal preferences or speculation. Now, most of the public testimony we get at a conditional use hearing is personal preferences or speculation. You know, I think this is going to cause a lot of traffic. I think there's going to be noise. I think this may, you know, reduce my property values. And so one thing that I've been doing in my report is trying to give you something meaty with substantial evidence, facts, and information, rather than just my personal opinion or my personal professional opinion that I don't think this is a good idea, or I think a limitation makes sense. If the applicant agrees to meet all of the requirements specified by the Plan Commission or the elected body, the local government must grant the CUP. So if we come up with something that's, you know, really a bad idea, and there's a consensus that we want to deny, we should come up with requirements that really address our concerns, and we'll see whether the applicant agrees to them or not. And this is a lot more difficult than just saying, we think this is a bad idea and let's deny it. Finally, the applicant must provide substantial evidence that in the application that all normal requirements and conditions are met or will be met. So it goes a little bit back on the applicant, but the main impacts of that rule change were we have to do a careful job of documenting why we're imposing recommendations or identifying a condition that we think is reasonable that the applicant thinks will, make the proposal non-viable, and so they withdraw. And then finally, if the applicant does not meet one or more of the requirements, the local government can deny the conditional use permit. That's always been the case. And in fact, we may be faced where an applicant has failed repeatedly to meet the requirements. It's clear that we can go through the hearing process again and revoke the conditional use permit. But we'll have to be able to prove our case with facts and other substantial evidence. So 3 years ago, we could do this in a manner that was, practical and informal, and we could have a kind of an informal discussion about things. There could be some give and take with the applicant, and we could get, everybody could use their imaginations. And now everything has to be documented. So I think that from now on anyway, and as we have been doing over the last 3 years, it's good to have a report. It's good for the report to cite facts. And it's good for the Plan Commission to make findings as to whether or not some of those facts and conditions need to be imposed. So it's a lot more work for me, and what I'll try to do is not make it much more work for you, but you may find me at times saying, why, can you offer some evidence of why you think this will cause too much traffic? Hopefully I'll be able to do that in my report, but from time to time, we may want to table action on a conditional use to allow myself or the village engineer or public works director, for example, time to gather some of those facts so we don't rush you into a decision. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Yeah, I got a couple for you. Can you go back to the chart that you had up there? And I guess here's where I'm coming from with this. When I looked at that chart, it seemed like there were a lot of C's and a lot of boxes. And I'm looking at, if I was a business owner and I'm looking at property in Cross Plains, and I see I have to go and get a conditional use permit to start my business, versus in Middleton, where I can just go in and I can do it automatically, I'm going to go to Middleton because I don't want to go through the hassle. And I think my question, just to see if this is where I'm understanding this correct, let's say the project we just talked about, we just approved a conditional use permit. Let's say someone comes up to Mike and gives him an offer he can't resist. They buy the building from Mike and they want to put a daycare back in it. They would have to come through this whole process because it's a conditional use permit. Even though we've allowed it once before, my understanding of this, they would have to come through again. Is that correct?
If the daycare center goes away for a full year, to reestablish it, it would need a conditional use permit. That's correct.
And I guess what I would like to do, and I think you brought it up, is take a look at this chart and maybe update it and maybe put a few more P's in there and eliminate some of the Cs. So it's a little bit easier for businesses that want to start up in Cross Plains. They have a good starting point, they know they can do it without spending the money or taking the chance and spending the time on trying to go through a government bureaucracy and to get the permits. I guess that's kind of where I'm coming from on this. So this was extremely helpful, and I didn't know we had this table. I guess I'll have to get a copy of it, and it's clearly something I think this committee needs to look at to see if we need to add some stuff, but maybe make some modifications to it, because, I mean, I look at, I get complaints about all the open storefronts like down in the mall. We had someone that was interested to do something. We can't even figure out how to give them approval because it seems like we have to have the neighborhood association approve it. It's got to go through the conditional use permit and whatever. No wonder no one wants to start a business. If you got to put that kind of money into it to start with versus going somewhere else where it may be a lot easier. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. But this is good to know, and I think this table would be a heck of a good starting point.
We can all look at it and have this open discussion on why can't you have a bed and breakfast in Main Street mixed use all the time or that.
Right.
Right, and you know, I think the villages had a very positive record approving conditional uses. So if you were to make a number of these Cs turn into Ps, I don't think that's a bad strategy. A number of other communities have done this too. Let me take you to one final page of the zoning code and show you one other thing. Let's see here. I got to go to 127. So we were talking about bed and breakfasts. And can you see the page in the code that deals with bed and breakfast here?
Yes.
So it's okay to have a permitted use, but still identify requirements ahead of time.
Exactly. That's what I think we should do, so someone can see it ahead of time and not worry about, are we going to approve it this time? There could be a whole new commission next year, and they wouldn't approve the next person. Right? It will get fairness and consistency.
Right. So one option we have is when we're considering making some of those Cs a P, you know, we have the ability to add pre-identified requirements for any P as well as for any C. So that is something under this design of a code. We can add more control, but still make it easier to get that permission to do the use.
And we don't need all the data that you now need for conditional use. It seems like if it's in here, that's how it is. You don't have to come up with data and justifications like the new law says we have to do with conditional use. Is that
exactly correct? It'll be easier on everybody, including you and you all, and including me. I want to show you one last thing.
Hey, Mike, can I interrupt for just a second?
Yes.
What will who has the authority to make these changes?
The Plan Commission makes recommendations to the village board, and the village board makes these changes by adopting an ordinance to make the change.
Okay, thank you.
All righty, let's see. Let me go back to that table. Now, another thing that this table allows us to see, for example, we've got some uses like indoor institutional that go all the way across the board. And indoor institutional in our code means schools or churches, for example. And right now, you know, because we end up with schools and churches in residential zoning districts, so they're even allowed over in our residential districts. But if you wanted to, for example, you could make these Cs in the non-residential areas Ps, you would still have the ability to keep these as Cs. So again, this chart gives us a pretty darn fine grain level of control. If there are some uses that you're comfortable with in certain areas of the village, but not in others. So I'd be happy to give you my opinion, maybe just as a starting point, as to which of these we always tend to approve, even though there's conditional uses, and which ones tend not to evolve into any kind of problem. And maybe we use that as a starting point, or if you prefer, we could have a couple working sessions where we just go through this as a group and talk about each of the Cs and each of the Ps. So whichever your preference is, I think one way or another would be the right way to go about it.
Well, what I'd like to do is for everybody to get the whole table so they can look at it, but it would be nice to have yours with what you think are no-brainers or low-hanging fruit. That would be easier to get us started so we have success and we don't get bogged down on one. So it'd be a combination of two where everybody gets to look at everything, but obviously you have the historical perspective and you could give us the ones that, like you just mentioned, that would clearly be helpful, and that could probably be the start. You always pick the low-hanging fruit and work your way up. Judy has a question for you, too.
Hey, Mike, do other communities like Wanakee and Middleton, Black Earth, or any of them, do they have these kind of charts also that we could actually compare other villages to ours?
Some of them do. The ones that I've written have them because I've always found this to be super helpful to people. But every community, has zoning districts where they list the permitted and conditional uses. So it's pretty easy to look at other communities and see, how they're treating these.
I think that'd be very helpful.
Yeah. So would you be interested in Middleton, say Mount Horeb, Black Earth,
Maybe
Pennsylvania, and Wanakee?
Wanakee especially, because I'm told all the time, it's so much easier in Middleton and Wanakee than Crest Plains. That's what I get thrown in my face a lot. So
Yeah.
I'd like to see those two for sure.
I can tell you it isn't, but that's what people are probably going to tell you. But I'd be happy to put a couple extra columns over here in the right that would be what Wanakee does and what Middleton does and maybe Mount Horeb, and because those I think are your peers.
Yeah.
Black Earth and Meso are pretty quiet compared to the amount of changes we've seen lately. But if you'd like me to look at those communities, I'd be happy to do that also.
No, I think the ones that you just
Is
listed
everybody
are
in
great.
agreement? I think that's exactly what I was looking for. That sounds like a really good starting.
I appreciate that.
Very good.
Does anybody else have any questions for Mike? Does that, I don't want to speak for the group, but does that sound like a good?
Sounds like a good way to go, a reasonable way to go.
Okay. Yeah, I think we have consensus here, Mike, so you can kind of put that together, that would be great.
All righty. It may be a month, we may have to skip a month. It's really busy right now, and this will require some work, but I'll make a commitment that at the latest, you'll see this in March.
All right, that's fair.
This week gives us time to put these charts over.
Yeah, and can we get these charts like ahead? Do we have access?
Yeah, I'll send them out. This is actually part of our zoning code.
Oh, okay,
The 300 pager that we
okay.
did there somewhere.
All right, why don't you,
I'll send
Bill
it
will
over.
send that to us so we can at least start looking at it.
And I think it's Article 3 that explains what each use is. So
Right. And this, for example, is page 81.
Okay,
I can send that out to everyone.
that would be great.
Well, I appreciate your intelligent discussion of this issue and the conclusion that this table could use some reworking because the conditional uses are harder to work with now. And I think that'll benefit everybody. Thank you.
Very good, thank you, Mike. All right,
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah, I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. Meeting adjourned.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year, everybody. Hey, Mike.